Good to go now? Okay, here we go. All right, reboot. Here we go.
Okay.
All right.
Happy Sunday, Tampa Bay. Andrew Duncan with the Duncan Duo team at LPT Realty, back for another week of the Duncan Duo Real Estate Show, starting off March 1st today, talking about all things Tampa real estate. When we aren't on air, make sure to follow us at the Duncan Duo, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, pretty much every social media channel out there at the Duncan Duo. When we aren't on air, always putting out the best real estate knowledge that we possibly can. And I am excited to have a couple of our partners on the show today. Melissa Rodriguez with Citywide Home Mortgage, as well as Wade Sweikel with Two College Brothers Moving. I had an awesome trip in Europe. I went to Paris and Spain, and so I'm kind of back and refreshed. But you know, I was on the plane ride home, and I've been to Spain a bunch, but this was my second trip to Paris. The first time I went was about 12 years ago. And I had a really bad experience. I did not enjoy Paris. I came home thinking that Parisians just must hate Americans. They just must not like us, right? And so this time on my trip, I had a massively different experience. I loved Paris. Everyone was super nice. I had no one hating on me. And it made me realize, on the plane ride home, I kind of figured out, what the difference was. And the difference was 12 years ago, I stayed in crappy, cheap hotels and went to crappy, cheap restaurants and looked for the discount and tried to buy on price, right? And it made me realize the similarities that people, buying the most expensive thing that they're ever going to buy, a house, selling the most expensive thing they're ever going to sell. The similarities of that experience that I had by going cheap, is rampant in real estate. So many customers have a bad real estate experience, but it's their own fault because they pick the cheap people. Mm-hmm. They pick the cheapest agent. They pick the cheapest mortgage. They pick the cheapest mover. And then they had this horrible experience, and they had stuff gets broken, and the closing doesn't happen, and the lender lied to them about this fee, and their taxes were wrong, and and all the while not wanting to accept the responsibility of, hey, maybe you shouldn't have gone with the cheap guy. Cheap work ain't good, and good work ain't cheap is a quote I've heard from a mentor for years, and so I'm happy to have you both on today because I think you guys are the best of the best. And the best of the best isn't cheap. You do get what you pay for. And Wade, we've talked about this a lot. You've shared some of the stories of the pickup truck movers and the guys that'll break your stuff and hold your stuff hostage when they want to upsell you because they quoted you some ridiculous number they knew they couldn't meet. And then they get to moving you in and they say, oh, we underestimated. You owe us another $1,000. And you're like, oh, no, I don't. Well, yeah, you do, because your stuff's in my truck. How often you guys hear those experiences, and a lot of times it's just consumers being cheap, and then the experience is horrific because they tried to cut corners with the cheapest guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had a very similar Europe experience. I went in college, stayed at hostels, and it was okay. It was an eye-opening experience to be able to see other cultures. But I recently also went to Paris, and last summer for my mom's 70th birthday, I took her out there, and
that's awesome.
We didn't really cut any corners.
Yeah.
We stayed at hotels instead of hostels,
of
course.
You stayed at nice places, and you went to maybe a little bit more. And again, I'm not saying I didn't go like crazy. Like I just didn't look for the cheapest, right? And so many consumers, they're always looking for the cheapest. And, we had an experience not long ago with a client that moved. And, we said, hey, look, you guys got to use this mover. It's our preferred mover. And they said, oh, well, we quoted, and this company was a little bit cheaper. Yeah. And then like weeks later, they're like, we had such a horrible experience. We left them a bad review and blah, blah, blah. And they did this and they did that. Well, yeah. Because you went with the cheap person. You went to Chick-fil-A and expected Ocean Prime.
Yeah.
And look, I love me some Chick-fil-A. I go there a lot, but it ain't the same experience as Ocean Prime.
No, it's not. And I think it's important. There's certain things in life that are commodities, and there's certain things that if you're going to do it, you might as well do it right and bite the bullet and spend just a little bit extra money in order to get a good quality experience. Travel is definitely one of them, but so is home services.
Yeah.
We see it all the time. It's probably the number one reason we don't book a job is because somebody found a cheaper price. And I was recently just talking to somebody who had a very small move last week, and it was a friend of mine, hadn't talked to in probably a year or two, but she was moving, and she said, this other company said $500 over the phone. And I was like, how could they just say $500 over
There's
the
no
phone
way they could know
without
that.
seeing it? And I knew firsthand where she lived, long hallways, elevators. I was like, there's no way. And they're like, yeah, they're sending 3 guys out for $500. They just said that over the phone. I'm like, okay, let's look them up online. Let's see if they have a license. I go to the Florida Department of Agriculture Consumer Services mover license lookup. They're not licensed.
Right.
Their SunBiz said they're out of Fort Myers. It's like, how are they helping somebody in Tampa Bay if they're based out of Fort Myers? So there's a lot of those red flags, and I always encourage consumers, if they get a offer that's too good to be true, it probably is.
Oh,
and to go and
100%.
look those things up, because it's expensive to do business right.
It's so funny that, and again, like someone moving their stuff, this is your stuff. Like, what's more? I mean, like, what's more valuable? It's like, this is your stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
and it's crazy.
It's important to you.
People go spend $20,000-$30,000 on furniture,
and then they'll pay some cheap guy, and the cheap guy messes it up.
Exactly.
Like, we literally we deal with it all the time. It's like, oh, who did you hire? Did you hire the company that we recommended? Oh, no, we didn't. Oh, well, then there's really nothing I can do to help you. Like, unfortunately, like, you went with the cheap guy, and that's what you get. There's also, again, kind of going back to it's too good to be true. We deal with this in the mortgage space, right, Melissa? You'll get a customer that'll come in, and they'll get quoted this insanely low rate or this insanely low payment. Yeah. And then, when push comes to shove, when it gets close to closing, the tax proration was wrong.
Right.
The insurance proration was wrong. Oh, to get that rate now, because the lender was booking too many loans because they're in a call center and they never locked your rate, so they lied to you. Oh, but now you've got to put a bunch of money down to buy your rate down to get that rate. Like, so many mistakes because you went with the cheap person. I mean, this is a mortgage you're going to be with for up to 30 years. No one really 30 years, but you're going to be with it for a long time. Maybe you should pick somebody that knows what they're doing, that isn't the one that's going to cut the corners and be the cheapest.
Right.
Yeah.
And just come in and have a chat with us. We're on your team. It's a relationship. It's not always the cheapest rate. Let me look at your monthly payment. Maybe, you're comfortable paying a little bit higher rate, or maybe there's just different strategies that we look at, but we're a team that cares, not just somebody that, is just going to take your application and move you on to the next, department and never talk to you again.
Yeah.
We are together from start to finish. So
I think again, when you do get that person that's looking only on the numbers, and they're coming to you and saying, well, this company's quoting some rate, and you're like, I have no idea how they're pulling that off. It's probably not real. It's a bait and switch, or there's some sort of massive prepayment, or you've got to buy the rate down, or there's something wrong there. And again, the cheap people are operating at a different level of service. We talked about this before, my trip, for example. The cheap hotel isn't necessarily, they're just turning people over. They're just turning stuff over. They're volume shop. They don't really care if you're happy because they're going to win. They're going to win business by being the cheapest. The service is going to be bad. The experience is going to be bad. So the mortgage lender that's the cheap one isn't going to return your phone call. They're going to provide bad service.
They're not going to work the weekends.
They're not going to close on. You know how many times I've seen people lose their dream home because the lender didn't get it done on time because they were a volume shop working only on mass units to be able to make it work, and then the deal falls apart and you lose your dream house because you went with the guy that was quoting you a quarter point lower, that was dishonest, and then had too much business, couldn't provide good service.
Correct.
Yeah, and it's rampant.
Yeah, I think real estate, moving, it's a relatively low barrier to entry to get into it. And I think a lot of people look at these businesses like commodities, and they just think that, it's all going to be the same at the end of the day. Let me just try to find the cheapest possible thing. But it's just simply not the case. I mean, I can speak for moving more than real estate, but I mean, if you want to have licensed, insured, background checked people, you drug test your movers, you have workers' compensation, you have a support staff that can actually work together to get it done, rather than just bottleneck at one owner who's also on the trucks trying to take down the notes on the phone while they're driving, to their next job. That's going to be a way different experience at the end of the day than somebody who has an office team where this person's handling the move coordination, this person's scheduling the movers, this person's hiring and training the movers, this person's checking in with you throughout the process, 7 days in advance, the day before, confirm. They're calling during the move. They're checking in after the move to address any issues that may have arose so that they can make those right. You see a lot of these one-man band shops that they just can't do that. They don't have the bandwidth to be able to scale that.
And here's what, and I can't say this on air, but I call it eating a called a poop sandwich. Okay. So when you have a business like yours or like mine and like ours at Citywide, where you have a lot of reviews, right? You've had a lot of happy customers. I've got 1,500 and something. You've got gobs of reviews too, right? Like we're one of the best reviewed businesses in Tampa, and it's because we do a great job for our customers, and we care about making things right. And when you do have a business like that, and when you're not just operating at the cheapest discount possible you can, you also can provide post-closing support. You can resolve problems. You can help them recover something. For the guy that's the cheapest, that's cutting corners on insurance, when he breaks your mom's china plate, there's nothing standing behind him to fix that. Like at our company, if something goes wrong, like we want you to come back to us. We're going to try and we're going to try and make that right. The guy that's shopping on price doesn't have any margin to make anything right. So when something goes south, you're SOL. Nothing's getting done. Your problem's not getting solved. And so I think that's another, I in fact, kind of brought me to this, to an idea or a conversation I had this week. A real estate agent with a different company ran into a problem and a bad problem and is worried about getting sued and probably will get sued. And unfortunately, this real estate agent went to the company that is like the discount of all discount. Like, they're not paying much. That broker really isn't benefiting financially from helping them. And so when they went to their broker to say, hey, what am I going to do? And they're like, you're on your own. And that's the reality of what happens in businesses when a business isn't operating from a place where it can provide good service, where it wants to provide good service, where it cares about its reputation, where it has enough business to earn a profit to be able to solve problems. There's nothing wrong with someone earning a profit in their business. And if they're not, then guess what? When you do have a problem because you went with the cheap guy, you're stuck solving it because they don't have a means to help you.
Well, you want whoever you work with to be profitable because that means they're going to be in it for the long haul.
Right.
You want somebody who's going to be motivated
100%.
to take care of as many clients as possible for as long a period as possible and not just trying to make a quick buck or is desperate for the business. So they're willing to lose money on that business to get it. I see it all the time in home services and moving where owners don't know their numbers and they just throw out prices to try to beat the next guy down the street who also does it.
But then they're losing money.
Exactly.
Right. And I, on the mortgage side of it too, I think we, again, kind of going back to the service level, customers so often aren't factoring that in. And they're looking only at the rate and the cost. And what happens is then by the time they finally get into the house, they're so frustrated that they hated the experience, but it was all because they went with the cheap person. The service, the experience, and then the ability to actually close is another important one.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, we strive to close, get a clear to close early, at least a week ahead of time.
And you guys do a great job of that.
And like how we're talking right now, it's not just about mortgage. I mean, it's about the connections that we have to offer.
Correct. Referrals to different people, to solve problems, to fix credit,
with all fantastic reviews. Like I wouldn't think twice about sending somebody to, and you not doing a good job. I know that your company would do. You're so reputable. You have amazing reviews. So I would send whoever, my daughter to you. I would feel super comfortable. Same with you, Andrew, and your team. So I think that's more to offer than just the regular, call center. Like
and I'm glad you bring that up, like feeling comfortable around the people that you're working with, because good people are going to expect to get paid more. In order to attract the best talent to
you're
deal
gonna
with your clients,
have to pay them.
You have to pay them a little bit more, or else you don't know who you're going to get. It could be somebody who's desperate for a job that just came out of the penitentiary.
We're up against a break. We'll be back again. Cheap work ain't good. Good work ain't cheap. We're going to continue this conversation after a quick break here on the Duncan Duo Show. So we're back here on the Duncan Duo Show talking about the Tampa Bay real estate market. Andrew Duncan, the Duncan Duo team, LPT Realty, joined by Melissa Rodriguez with Citywide Mortgage, as well as Wade Sweikel with Two College Brothers. We talked in the first segment about how customers make the mistake far too often of going with the cheapest provider in their most expensive purchase. I also want to kind of talk about this too, because I think it's important that you are buying the most expensive thing that you're likely going to buy, unless it's a business or investment. You're also at the same time negotiating, going through all these processes, and you need support and help. And I've always said this on the real estate side, that if you hire a real estate agent, that the very first thing they do is cut their fee, you're hiring a poor negotiator. Like, you just hired somebody to negotiate with other people about the equity in your home, and the very first thing they did was lower their fee. They're going to lower your equity too. There's conversations as a consumer that you don't get to hear, that you don't get to experience, that your agent is going to have with other agents and buyers for your property. And if they're not a good negotiator on the fee to you, they're not going to be a good negotiator on the equity to the buyer or the buyer's agent. So it's really important that that when you're working in real estate, if you've had bad experiences, I would ask you to really step back and reconsider what your contribution to that bad experience, which was, what parameters did you use to hire the people? Did you look to hire the best, the most experienced, the ones that have the results, that spend the marketing, that have the training, that have the education? Or, like I said, did you go with the cheap guy? And on both with real estate, mortgage, and moving, the people that hire the cheap guy are going to have massively worse experiences than the people that say, I want the best. I want the expert. I want the pro. I want the company that's got these things. And then that pro can solve problems that can't be solved if the person doesn't have any margin. If they don't, and I say this to consumers too, and it's the same with you, Wade. It's like, and same on the mortgage front. You get somebody that says, "Oh, I found somebody that can do it $250 or $500 cheaper." They're cutting something. Mm-hmm. Are they cutting the background checks out of the employees? Are they cutting the training? Yeah, are they cutting the insurance?
The insurance, the staffing, in order to make
the maintenance on the trucks that ends up crashing and destroying your stuff.
The last thing you want is a truck with a big hole in the roof because they can't
then
afford
your stuff's
to get
getting rained on.
And then it rains on
right. Or like you said, the training, all of the support staff. Can you solve a problem? And on the mortgage front, on that same topic. If you're looking for the person that says, "Oh, I'll do it, cheaper than everybody else and lower than everybody else," there's something that they're cutting.
Well, it was just, I had a customer, very well-off customer who was buying his second home. He was like, "Melissa, I would love to work with you, but, I'm not going to mention the lender, but so-and-so is offering me a lower rate. No problem. Good luck to you." Literally a week and a half later, he came back. He's like, "I am coming back to you with my tail between my legs. They didn't know that I was purchasing a manufactured home." And those are one of the things that I look up.
That's unbelievably bad that lender did that.
You have to look up the address. I give my clients an estimate for every home that they're interested in. I go onto the tax collector's website. I pull taxes. I get an insurance quote. I do my due diligence up front. Everything's very transparent. And, we talk about every property that they're interested in because, like you said, it is the biggest investment of your life.
You're getting ahead of the potential problems that the other person didn't because they're not very good. And the reason they're not very good is because they're the cheap guy. Right. So they don't get the education. They don't get the at-bats. They don't have the experience to navigate through the problems. So you end up having more problems and more financial risk. And, again, just like my trip to Paris, I also, there's certain investments that I have made where friends of mine have said, "Oh, the fees on that are really high. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and put my money in a money market where they don't charge me any fees." And then a year later, let's track how our investments did. Mine, where I paid an advisor that knows what they're doing, that trades in the market every day, and I paid him his fee, and he got me 32%. Oh, you made 4%. Congrats on saving that 3% fee that you were worried about with this guy. People look at it wrong. They look at it only at cost instead of investment, and they don't look at the experience of it. And they make a ton of mistakes.
Correct.
My attorney used to say it's a lot cheaper to keep you out of trouble than it is to get you out of trouble.
100%.
And we see that all the time where people think that they're saving a little bit of money up front. And then when it comes to making the repairs, or if that company doesn't show up and then they have to call a company last minute, they end up spending more money. Or if they're trying to move themselves and they go get the U-Haul, they see it advertised for $19.99, but they don't factor in the $1.50 mileage fee and all the materials and the equipment that they need and the doctor's visits when they pull their back or slip a disc and all the other things that aren't disclosed in that price.
And look, man, I'm at the age now, like when I was in my 20s, could I call a couple buddies and say, "Hey, man, I'll give you some pizza. Can you come help me move?" Yeah, but like when you get into your 30s and 40s, your friends don't want to freaking help you move, okay? Hire the people, pay the price. It's 100% worth it. The experience is better. The response is better. The service is better. And not just you guys with our clients, but you guys have moved stuff. They've moved me, multiple times. They've moved stuff out of houses I bought. And I think, again, like the premise is, if you're in this space looking at buying or selling real estate, looking at moving, looking at getting a mortgage, resist the urge to only shop on price. Of course, we all have to be competitive. I don't want anyone to think that any of us here sitting at this on this show are gouging people.
Right.
But we're competitive. We're just not the cheapest, because
it's about
when you
value.
go cheap, 100%, it's you get what you pay for.
Yeah.
It's the value that you're providing for the customer and the experience, because and I think at the same time, the advice. The professional advice that they get, whether it's navigating through their credit problems and helping them understand their taxes, or for us, it's things that you have to do to the house to improve your equity, or what day of the week we should go on the market, or how the photos should be edited, or like what the marketing strategy is. And with you guys, it's the same concept. It's how your stuff should be packed, what you should do with these items. You should take these items and do this, or here these should be packed. This should be wrapped with cellophane and padding, and like that. That's the stuff that that's what you're paying for. And people mess that up, and then they have broken stuff, home sales that don't go through, and mortgages that cost them their dream home because the lender that was the cheap guy couldn't get it closed, and then the deal fell apart. So we're gonna be back after a quick break here on the Duncan Duo Show. So we're back here on the Duncan Duo Show talking about the Tampa Bay real estate market. Andrew Duncan with LPT Realty, Melissa Rodriguez with Citywide Home Mortgage, citywidetampa.com, and Wade Sweikel, two college brothers. It is the time of year that you need to make sure your homestead exemption is filed. I have to admit, I have made the amateur hour mistake in the past of not filing my homestead exemption. This is a long time ago. This is before I was a real estate agent. But I did. I bought a house. And then I get my tax bill and I'm like, whoa, what is this? Yeah. Fortunately, the county property appraiser was very helpful and ended up helping me correct it, and as well as make it retro. So they were super awesome about that. I've had Bob Enriquez on my show in the past before, the Hillsborough County property appraiser, and he helps, kind of explain. But I think right now, Melissa, you were saying how often you're talking to out-of-state people, qualifying them for a mortgage.
So I'm really happy to talk about this topic because we are seeing such an increase in out-of-state buyers that are moving to Florida from out of state that have no idea what homestead exemption is. So please make sure and listen up. Please make sure that if you're purchasing a primary residence in Florida, that you file for homestead. So what it is it's a up to $50,000 reduction in your taxable value. And side note, there are additional exemptions, possibly if you're a disabled veteran, if you're a widower, if you have certain disabilities, there are additional exemptions that you can apply for. But it is, and another benefit from this homestead exemption is that your assessed value is
go up more than 3.
Right.
Yeah.
It's capped at 3%. So annually. So it doesn't matter if your property values are going up 10, 15%, your value and what you're paying your taxes on, it's capped at 3%.
Yeah, and the deadline to file that is March. So we're there. Like, make sure
March
you do
1st.
this. Don't wait. Yeah, today is March 1st. So what I can tell you is, and again, from my experience, if you're a couple days late, they'll generally work with you. I've heard very positive things about people that came in a few days late or were gone on vacation or didn't get it in time. But it is really important to make sure that you have your homestead exemption on your house. A couple other things important too about homestead exemption that not a lot of people know. In Florida, your homestead exemption property, the property that you claim as your homestead, is also protected from all creditors except the IRS. So let's say you go out and do something and the majority of your worth is in the equity of your home. That can't be, your primary residence can't be penetrated. So how they, and again, I'm not a lawyer, but one really easy protection to show that it is your primary residence is having your homestead exemption filed on that property. So there are certainly people in Florida that move to Florida or keep their primary residence here for that specific purpose because it's asset protection too. There's a lot of political discussion right now about the homestead exemption being, kind of bumped up on steroids a little bit, and maybe even including, but not limited to, a waiver of property taxes over a several-year period. So there, if you want to ensure that happens for your property in the future, you need to make sure that you have the proper exemption now, because there's definitely a runway and some momentum of some massive property tax relief coming to Florida. Whether or not it's a true completely wipe out of the non-school taxes or whether it's kind of phased out over years. There's a lot of different proposals going through the House and the Senate in the state of Florida, but they do sound relatively promising. And I think we will see some even additional benefits for those people that file homestead. But again, if you don't file it now and you keep staying in that home and then it shows up, you may not qualify for it. So another important reason why you need to make sure that it's filed now.
You're literally, if you don't file, you're leaving money on the table. But so today, March 1st, is the deadline if you purchased a home last year.
Correct.
If
you've purchased
November,
this year, you have until
March
the following
1st
March
of 2027.
And it's interesting because title companies used to do it for you. They used to help you. And then apparently they all stopped because there was it became litigious, like something got misfiled or, somebody claimed homestead that didn't really, that had another homestead. And then the title, so title companies stopped doing it. But it's really easy to do online. Obviously, this show's broadcast in a lot of different counties, but it's your county's property appraiser website is the logical place to do that. And it's, again, it is a tax savings. It's also a tax cap. And I'm very confident that there will be a massive relief even further than what's on the books now. How far that goes, it needs a 60% constitutional majority vote on the ballot in 26 to go into effect the following year. So I think they have to be cautious about not going too far with it because then it may not get the votes and the support. But I'm pretty confident they'll come up with something that they pull and test enough to give some major property tax relief, which I think will keep moving more people to Florida. There's no question people made political moves over the last several years. That COVID brought people here. We've heard it from people. I left New York or I left California because I didn't like the way the state was going. We've heard that over and over again. And so I think we're going to continue to see a movement of people here, and I think that will supercharge it even more for our real estate market. Whether or not the national real estate market a year from now is thriving, I think it'll be better. I know that will help propel our real estate market. And guess what? As people move here, they need storage. And Wade, you guys just just came up with a plan to add some additional stuff to the Two College Brothers moving business, including some storage locations.
Yeah, absolutely. And we actually have been starting to see an uptick of people moving from other states that we're going up to get and bringing them down here. And a lot of times that's referred by a local realtor because people find a local realtor and then they refer us and then we go up. We're going to Michigan next week to do a big 3-truck move all the way down here. And a lot of times people come down here.
That's one thing I think it's important to reiterate too really quickly. So if you're listening to this and maybe you're visiting or you're shopping for a home or you're a real estate agent, like you guys don't just have to do local moves. You guys can move someone from wherever they're moving from.
Yep, anywhere in the country. And we recently opened up some new options to get very competitive with those long haul prices with tractor trailers and that sort of a thing. But what I see a lot of people do is they come and they rent an Airbnb for a month or two while they get the lay of the land. They figure out what neighborhoods they want to work with. Their realtor is showing them homes. Yep. And they have all this stuff from a big 4-bedroom house up in Michigan that they don't know what to do with. So we actually just moved in to a warehouse that will allow us to store store 4 times what we were storing at our previous warehouse. It's over by the Clearwater St. Pete Airport, very close to where we're broadcasting today.
Yep.
And we'll be able to fit over 1,000 vaults in there. We've got rack storage for palletized racks, so we can do receiving. If you're building a house or if you're an interior designer that needs a place to have items shipped to you, we can receive them, inventory them, inspect them, and then deliver them when the time's ready. More commercial work, FF&E, working with home builders, but also just residential stuff. Whether they move to the area, they're renting an Airbnb or something for a short period of time, and then trying to find their dream home through you guys, then we'll be able to bring them over to there. They can stay there for one night, a week, a month, a year, indefinitely. And we're also doing snowbird storage. We're seeing a lot of people that come down with just their truck or their vehicle, their sedan, and they acquire stuff. They get through the holiday seasons, they realize they're going to come back, and then they just store things. Could be Christmas decorations, files. We're going to be able to get into now fine wine and art storage.
Oh, nice. Wow. Very cool.
We're going to have a setup with the right climate control and the right flooring and sheetrock and everything that prevents fumes from getting into fine wines. So really, we've kind of pivoted a little bit from being a moving company that does some storage to a full service everything storage company that still does a lot of moving.
Of course.
I wanted to ask you, because I the last time you guys came to the office and had a talk, are you still offering the hurricane relief?
Yes.
Storage?
Yeah. So if there's a hurricane approaching, we can come and get your things and store it through the duration at no charge through hurricane season.
And again, we're tiptoeing close to that season, right? We're nearing hurricane season. With March 1, it starts to be on the we're not there yet, but it's within reach. So that's an important thing.
We're doing file document storage for that, no charge for the duration of hurricane season. And then we have a realtor declutter program. So if you're going in to stage a home or get a home ready to sell or to get listed on the market, we'll come in and provide a couple guys, load up a vault worth of furniture, get all that little clutter out of the way. And that's no cost to you. We just hope it turns into a bigger move.
That's a really good thing. You should come back to the office to reiterate that program, because I think, man, that's probably one of the number one tips I give most home sellers. It's like, imagine your house as close as you can get it to a model home at a new construction property. And again, you may not be able to get it as perfect, but you need to think more minimal. Most of the time, the number one thing they need to do is declutter. They need to get rid of stuff. The stuff is too packed, or they have distracting stuff. They live there, so it doesn't correlate with them. They don't like the NASCAR collection on the wall or the the sports card collection.
Clutters so quick.
Yes, clutters. Yes, there's more clutter on top of clutter.
I open the closet. I'm like, "What? I just cleaned this out. I just
Where
purged.
did this
Where does this come from?"
Yeah. And it's true. And customers, I think, when they're selling their house, because they live in it, they get used to it. But it's the number one piece of advice we give most sellers: to depersonalize and declutter, and make the rooms more spacious. Remove that extra piece of furniture, and customers. Again, I think for you guys, it's brilliant too, because what you're essentially doing is saying, you know what, we're going to go ahead and take care of this for free, because then that customer is going to be like, well, they just took our stuff for free. Why would we not hire them to move us, right? And it makes it super convenient, because you have their stuff that needs their clutter that needs to clutter the next house. But while their house is on the market, we need to declutter. You can go clutter the next place, but right now we need it decluttered.
And I know your figurine collection is a huge selling point in your mind, but it may not be for the ideal buyer.
Before the next segment, so I got a couple minutes. I want to touch on that too, because that's another piece of advice: depersonalizing the house. Man, look, I'll tell you, even if you have really cool stuff, right? Like you have I remember seeing a house in Colbert Isles, showing homes to a client, and the guy was clearly like a very, he had an incredible sports collection, and he had shelves of sports cards, some of which were 6-figure sports cards. I'm talking but you know what? I don't remember the house at all, because I was paying attention to his stuff. And I think that's the downside, is sometimes even when you have cool stuff in your house, I don't remember the house. I remember the Mickey Mantle 53 Topps card. I don't remember. I remembered he had a PSA 10 Jordan rookie, which is like a couple $100,000 card. Wow. He literally had these incredible cards, and they were in locked cases and they were safe and stuff. but still, it's not only, it's certainly risky. What if somebody,
I
like,
know.
Pockets.
yeah,
An
like they
open
couldn't
house.
get
Better
to it
not
because it was
risk
locked
it.
in, but still, what if they broke something? What if they fell? Like,
Kids
it's just,
come with them and they start
Right.
playing with
so
the Babe Ruth sign
even if
ball.
you have cool stuff, you don't want people paying attention to your stuff. You want them paying attention to your house. I remember another story. This was a client had a waterfront property, and their daughter was like in beauty pageants. And true to this day, they came to us. They wanted a certain price, and we told them, "Look, we can get that price, but you're going to have to do a bunch of stuff." And this is around like a time when prices were like not in a good place. And the very first thing I told them is they had a whole wall, which was a shrine of all their daughter's beauty pageant pics.
Tiaras.
Yeah, it was everything. It was like a shrine to her. And she was beautiful. But I said, look, it's got to come down. And they were so offended. They were so offended that they didn't hire us because they were not going to. So when the home went on the market and you saw the pictures, it was so funny because you have the picture of the house and the whole wall was
my
just pictures
goodness.
of this like 20-something-year-old beautiful
Pageant
woman. But
queen.
then everyone's gravitated and paying attention to that. So true story. The home didn't sell. It ended up going through like 3 different realtors, and I could tell every time they weren't listening to the realtor. And it ended up selling for like, I want to say like $300,000 less than what I told them that we could get, but they were going to need to declutter. And they didn't declutter the whole time, so they got beat up on price, all because they didn't want to move their pictures off the wall. It was sad, but also you get what you pay for.
Oh my
So
gosh.
we'll be back. We're going to wrap
300,000.
what 300,000. Yeah.
my.
We'll be back after a quick break. Wrap up our last segment here on the Duncan Duo Show. So we're back here on the Duncan Duo Show. Andrew Duncan, LPT Realty, Melissa Rodriguez, Citywide Home Mortgage, and Wade Sweikel, 2 college brothers. Off-market homes have become, really, I think a lot of the TV shows and social media have kind of put a spotlight on it. And we get a lot of customers coming to us. And I want to celebrate a couple wins this week. We had a $2.9 million listing that wasn't yet on the market that we
Nice.
sold before it went on the market. We also found we have a client looking for really unique, exclusive open waterfront home in South Tampa. Found an off-market opportunity for them that we're showing this weekend. So if you're a consumer and you want that off-market approach, you just want us to either find a buyer or you're a buyer looking for something unique that you're not finding on the market. We've had great success doing that. We've got a good track record of it. We can certainly sell homes in that fashion. It's a different strategy. It's more of a private experience, kind of a concierge experience. But if that is something you're looking for, we'd love to help you. Again, at the Duncan Duo, theduncanduo.com. You can message us on any of our websites or through our social channels if that's something you're looking for. We'd love the opportunity to help you find it, like we have for a few of those customers this week. And Wade, kind of talking about an optimistic approach to real estate, what we're seeing and what you guys are seeing too, which is moves are up, which means the market is heading in a good direction. And it also means don't pay attention to national real estate stats when it comes to Tampa Bay because we bucked a trend.
Yeah, totally. And we saw a huge market boom 2022, 2023, and then like halfway through 23, kind of just screeched to a bit of a halt, and it kind of stayed that way through most of 24, 25. But going in the second half of 25, I think September was our best month.
It started to turn.
Yeah, October was second best. November, December, top months for those months. February is looking the same way, and it seems like that trend is going way up. More and more people are moving again. Mm-hmm. And I saw a stat recently that Tampa is ranked one of the top buyers markets in the country right now.
Yep.
So I think that has a lot to do with with it. We're talking about cutting the property taxes. You know,
It's going to drive people here for sure.
Yeah, and then you see everything going on in New York City and all that stuff. I think
Makes people move.
I think we're going to see a continued.
I think we're
trend.
going to continue to see a kind of a mini boom. And speaking of, you know, the affordability and one of the reasons why we're a strong buyer's market, we did see some softening in prices. I think I saw recently like a 4% year-over-year drop in our average sale price. And when people hear that, they think, oh, the market's crashing. 4% ain't a market crash, dude. Like I've been through a market crash. 4% in a year ain't it. Like that's of course it's not a great year, but 4% could be, you know, a statistical anomaly. It could be that you had a bunch of really low price, you know, homes, or maybe not as much in the high end that sold. So the reality is that we did see a softening of price, but that is not indicative of what I expect to see this year. And while prices, I think historically are a good deal right now, one of the major reasons is because we've hit interest rates at the lowest point. We've got the lowest interest rates right now since I think 23.
Right.
We're seeing stuff in the fives, pretty competitively in the fives for a lot of different products. And there are customers out there that have mortgage rates in the high sixes, mid sixes, sevens that could look at doing a refinance.
Let's just talk about it. You know, if you're not sure, come to me. We'll price it out. We'll look at different scenarios. I just did the refis are starting to you know, increase. I just did scenario with a client, wasn't sure if she wanted to do a cash out refi or a HELOC. We went over the different options. So that's what we're here for. Streamline refinances as well. You know, like those are, if you have an FHA loan or a VA, no income docs, no appraisal. It's super easy and quick, and that is strictly to reduce your interest rate.
That's it. Yeah. And people don't realize how simple it is for a streamline.
Right.
It doesn't matter if you're, you know, like, again, like the credit score, like you could be having some problems. Look, they're going to have your mortgage. FHA and VA have to back these mortgages. They're going to have your mortgage whether you're having those problems or not. If they can reduce your interest rate through a streamline, it greater increases the chances of you being able to satisfy the debt and make the payment. They're going to do it.
Right.
So if rates are lower, and again, citywidetampa.com, you can reach out to our team. Melissa can help you. She's going to run the figures. She's going to look at it and say, hey, this makes sense or it doesn't make sense. For some people, you're telling them, wait another 6 months. And for some of them, you're saying, nope, you're in a good place to do it now.
Yeah. 100%. So and like I said, we're truly transparent. We're, if you work late and you need weekends, we're here for you. Send us a text. We're here to help you and price whatever you need out.
And I think the other part of the streamline, again, it's VA and FHA. I have so many friends that are ex-military that I feel like something needs to happen in the military to help them understand their VA loan better.
Right.
Because so many of them don't even know. Like they're like, oh, I don't have to pay mortgage insurance. I don't have to put money down.
Yeah.
I don't have to, and I can just, you know, go through a streamline refinance and lower my rate and it not cost me. It's like, yes, like how are you guys fighting for your country and they're not educating you on this because they're clueless about it. But it's true. If you were a veteran, if you're active duty now, or you're a veteran and you want an expert to help you navigate through a VA mortgage, Melissa can help with it. We've done a ton of VA mortgages. Again, citywidetampa.com, hit her up and she would be glad to look at your scenarios. But yeah, so many veteran friends and enlisted, I have a friend that's a military contractor, but he gets VA because he was in Army before. And he was like, oh, so I can buy a house with no money down? I'm like,
yes.
Yeah,
and
that's
no
the point.
PMI.
Well, isn't it going to be more expensive? No, the rate's actually going to be lower. They're like, well, shouldn't I put money down and get a lower rate? It's like, you don't have to. Like, if you want to, but your rate's not with VA, like you don't have to put out. They're like, no money? It's like, yes, no money. So yeah, incredible product. Again, if you're looking for a VA streamline refinance or an FHA or any loan products at all, just hit up citywidetampa.com. And we appreciate you tuning in and have an awesome start to your March and an awesome rest of your weekend.